Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Backstage Pass. The Smiths as a band are no longer, but the music still remains. And tonight we'll take a look back through separate interviews with Johnny Marr and Morrissey, both done prior to the band's breakup. First, we'll meet Johnny Marr in an interview done in the summer of 1987.
When Morrissey and I got together, I had really these strong opinions on the way I wanted a group to sound. Yeah? And he had very strong opinions on the way he thinks a group should be. Not only sound, I mean, he certainly had really strong opinions on words and the way he wanted to sing, but just the way we presented ourselves and try and do something new. Through a few people who I played in groups with, they tried to get groups together with him, and he was a bit of a club goer, and which is something I got into a few years later when I first met him. And I knew of him, as I say, since being really young, and I trying to get various groups together and without any luck, and he was the only person I knew of all the time who took his words really seriously. So when I finally got completely fed up with not being able to get a decent singer, a decent writer, I remembered him and I thought, well, I just might as well take the plunge really. And I've been given a video by a guy who started to manage the group, but he'd given me a job in a clothes shop, this friend of mine, and it's a video of Lieber and Stoller on a British TV show, and Mike Stoller said that he wanted to write, and he knew this guy, they'd never talked before, so he just went round to his house and knocked on the door and said, let's write, you know. So that's what I did the next day. I sort of pretty much took a chance, went round to his house, and I just really didn't give him much chance to speak. He opened the door and I just fired a few hundred words at him, and then he said, oh, come on in, and it was a bit odd, but I just had a feeling that it would work out all right. You know, I'd like him, he'd like me. Well, I knew we had a lot of things in common musically, and that's what I went for, really. I didn't really know too much about him as a guy. I just told him what kind of music I liked. It was like a little game. I was asking him what he was into at that time, expecting. I thought, well, I hope it's the same stuff I'm into, and vice versa. And we just talked about the Marvelettes and Shangri-Las and people like that, Cookies, and girl groups mainly. So it was just I've been playing for a while and not really doing anything too serious, and I do like to sort of get things. I always form groups and get them rolling straight away, try and get demos done and all that sort of thing. So we took off in a group sense really quick. Before we started actually writing songs before I'd even heard him sing or before he'd heard me play, really. He gave me a bunch of words and I went off and stuck down a load of tunes. Either rock and roll will die because it means nothing, or it should be taken, as I say, into a new kind of area, a new 80s kind of area. I mean, I was very aware of all these things, certainly from a rock and roll standpoint. Morrissey really just wanted to bury rock and roll, full stop. And because of that, we have two really, and all the way down the line with everything we do, we have two really strong, different influences going in completely different directions. But when we come together, whether it be with music and words or between the two of us in conversation, it really works. Ask we wrote just before the last American tour. We recorded it just before, literally the week before we left on the American tour, and it was a big single for us in England. I mean, it's just, I really like it, it's a great song. But the good thing with that song is that I was writing it, and Morrissey's very in tune with what he wants to do musically, which helps me out a lot. I'm never ever restricted, but I gave him the song and he said there's too many chords, and I don't want this bit in it, I don't want that bit, and I said, well, hang on a minute, if we take these bits out then it's just the same chords over and over again. He said, exactly, yeah, that's exactly right. But I knew his vision's so strong with his songs. I mean, he's a lot more musical than people ever give him credit for, maybe because I take the credit for it. But he's very focused on what he wants to do. When he's got a set of words going with an idea, he'll cut and hack and all those kind of things. I really like it. It's a really straightforward pop song. The whole idea around it was I wanted to, when I sat down to write it, I was just write something surfy and very poppy, and whatever that sort of springs to mind. That's what happened. Ask me, all those things. I just wanted something really surfy, and it doesn't sound anything like the Beach Boys or anything, which is a shame in a certain aspect. But just between the guitar and drums, I wanted it to sound really kind of bubblegum. With Panic and Sheila and Shoplifters of the World, there's a side of my writing which, on the album, you can it really stand. There are a few different kinds of styles, and that one is, between those three songs, is a unified kind of sinister stomp, and that's a lot of which I like. So a lot of your first impression from the Rolling Stones records, this blackness, was really important to try and capture on a single for us. Shoplifters, I just wanted something, when it was played on the radio, which is rare here but not in England, I thought it was going to be so perverse to have a break that goes, because in England you just don't get that, I generally don't get it. I mean, I hate to get into this in England and US because there isn't really that much difference, but just in a radio sense, people, I knew that people, even Smiths fans, would be like, oh, I'm not sure about that, because it was really stompy. Now I've got known a little bit more about his past, because I bumped into people. Well, a guy who started roadieing for us actually went to school, same school as Morrissey. Didn't go to school with him. He was a few years younger, and this was when I first got to know Morrissey. We got this roadie, and he told me some stuff which was amazing about Morrissey in school. He was a real hero in school. He was a real misfit, and a major misfit, but he wasn't a hidden misfit, because he really odd. Because on the one hand, he's really he likes to hide, and he liked to hide as a youth, but having green hair in 1973 wasn't a really good way of hiding, It didn't take punk for him to do that. He was a really famous face around his area because he was a famous misfit, and parents didn't want the kids to know him and all that kind of stuff. Well, the thing is with Morrissey is that well, the word for it is, the nerd, say that the twit. He wasn't kind of one of those nerds who doesn't know anything. He was actually a nerd who was, I say nerd in the most affectionate sense. That's the way people in America understand it. A nerd who was much, much cooler and much, much more aware than the people who were supposed to be cool. This is Johnny Marr from the Smiths. You're listening to Backstage Pass. We'll be back after these messages.
You're listening to Backstage Pass with Morrissey of the Smiths.
I think it's inevitable that if you are a voice and your voice is on vinyl and your records are played, that you are a spokesperson of some degree. Many people become spokespeople for emptiness and monotony, and they breed boredom and escapism and nonsense. So therefore, if you say something that's clear and it's fluent, it becomes once again heavily scrutinized, and it's seen to be not dangerous but very important, very serious, and one automatically falls into a particular slot. And be that as it may, really, I don't mind, because if you can answer for everything that you do, then it's life is incredibly easy, as you can tell. Look at me.
1986 saw the release of the Smiths album The Queen is Dead, an album that was almost banned in England.
The strongest statements were made on the radio. I mean, they all came out and they were saying this title is sick and this record should be banned. And there were MPs trying to pass a motion to ban the record, never actually listening to it. But when they actually, on the day that the record was actually brought, as it were, before the courts, and major MPs listened to the record, they couldn't really see any feasible reason beyond the title itself why the album should be withdrawn. So it just slipped through. It entered at number 2, so the public really voted. And it has done remarkably well when so much was against it. But that has been the case so many times in the past. There has been opposition before people are really ready to listen. Even with a statement like meat is murder, it's too uncomfortable for people. It ruins their day. They just want to, shang-a-lang or whatever and be nonsensical. Yes, I am religious, but not in the typical way, really. I am by birth a Catholic, and I was brought up in that very austere atmosphere of fear and all those usual things and all that negativeness, you must constantly repent even though you haven't actually done anything or thought about anything or said anything, and you must confess. I mean, I always found the very idea of confession and going to confession, to me that is a sin. It's outrageously stupid. And I was raised in that atmosphere. you know, if you break an umbrella, you have to flee to church and confess it, and then you have to go into some hideous dark little chamber and say 1,000 prayers backwards. To me, that was always absurd, and constantly hurling fear at children and adults also. So to me, that's very, very negative. So in many ways, I find it very stupid, indeed. But I can get religious fervour about certain people and incidents and moods. So obviously, as we all do. Well, I can get very excited about. I mean, we all have our heroes, and I can get very religious about those things. I collect books, and that, to me, that's religious. And if I lose these books, I would be shattered. So that's very important to me. It's very hard for me to believe anything other than, you know, what's actually there and what I can actually touch and see. I mean, we can sit down and talk about Buddhism and talk about whatever and say, yes, well, there's somebody there and this person does this and your life is controlled by these forces. But if it's not really in your life, it's intangible, I find it very tiresome. Because life really isn't that simple. It's not like that. I mean, you go out, you get run over, you know, by a car or something, you get knocked down. I mean, you're just walking down a few stairs and you can break your leg and be paralyzed. So I don't know. I mean, this is the real situation. I can't believe in mystical bodies and waiting and, you know, we're all going to a pleasant valley eventually. But meanwhile, you know, how do you cope with day to day? You have to be realistic. You have to face what's in front of you and deal with it in a very rational, real way. Instead of, you know, saying, oh, it's the will of God, oh, it's the will of whoever. I mean, everything disastrous that happens, you know, if a woman is raped, it's the will of God. I can't consume that, really. My old headmaster from my old school was actually on the radio, and he was quizzed about the song because the education committee began to say this record should not come out, it should be banned, etc. Of course, they always have this little kerfuffle, but then it slips through and nobody really cares that much once the thing is released. But at first it was a tiny outrage, and he was on the radio and he was saying, I don't understand why he is saying these things. He was such a quiet, sweet, not sweet, but quiet young man, which of course is blatant lies. So he had his little 5 minutes worth of national notoriety. But yes, a lot of people objected. Spineless bastards, I mean, people do object to that. What difference does it make? The song was really trying to overstretch all kind of human boundaries and bring people together, because I find people are separated by so many trivial barriers and very trivial boundaries, whatever they may be. And the basis of the song was really asking the question, what difference does almost anything make? People should be together. I've sat down for years and tried to analyse this very question, almost, but I don't know anymore. I really just don't know. I mean, you're either happy or you're sad, and that's my very carefully pre-planned conclusion. So love, it's not really in my world, which sounds very overblown, but it's not. It's not really.
Does that make you sad?
Well, it used to, but not now, because I'm busy, so I can do other things. I think it's a very basic, fundamental need, really. I think we all have it. I think everybody has it. Animals have it. Everybody has it. And it's not really enormously common, the situation. It's a very difficult thing to touch, a very difficult vein to tap, almost. This feeling, knowing that one is needed, and one is wanted, and one is loved. It's very rare. The world is overpopulated, and most people are quite dramatically lonely. I mean, we have these couplings and coming together of people, but it's not really. In many cases, it's totally phony. It's not really truly a spiritual or a real thing. Well, that's the question that's forever on my lips. When does now happen? When do we get on with it?
XETRA FM, Baja California, Mexico.
91. The dog destroyed the upholstery.
You're listening to Backstage Pass.
Well, Smith's recorded songs. Well, with recorded songs, it's very difficult to separate them because it's like you give birth to twins and somebody says to you, which is your favourite one, you can't really say. And it's very difficult with the songs because, I mean, the words all come out of me, and they all come out of me in a serious way, and I want them to, and I want them to be there, and I love them. So it's hard to really say, well, this one is really it. So I can't really answer that question. It's a very difficult question to answer, because they all do in their own tiny way, or in their own overbearing way, however you care to view it. In the world generally, once again, I mean, all these questions I just cannot answer. There are so many songs which I can be mordantly, viciously, powerfully depressed, and I can just put a record on, and suddenly I'm elated and I'm happy. And there are so many examples of these. Songs which perhaps weren't too successful in their time, but for me, I could never really live without them. They always charge me and recharge the batteries, and that's why I know about the power of vinyl, the power of records. It is powerful. Everybody has the record that is precious to them. Even people who aren't particularly interested in music, you find they do have a song in the back of their mind which is very dear to them and speaks to them and stays with them for the rest of their lives, perhaps. And as time goes by, that's becoming more stronger and more serious and more important. Songs are becoming rather like novels and plays, and I really think that key figures in popular music will be remembered in much the same way that we remember pre-Raphaelites and famous playwrights and all those wonderful cornerstones of literature. I think a lot of popular figures will go down in history because it will end. I mean, the whole syndrome will end, and we'll look back and single out a few people as being gods of their time. Yes, but with the recurring line, hang the DJ, a lot of DJs didn't quite get the joke. I don't know why. Very funny people out there, very funny people out there. I thought it was very funny, really funny. But then, you know, I'm slightly self-absorbed. I mean, if I had somebody singing Hang the DJ, I'd laugh. I really would. I think, good heavens, you know, there's somebody saying something different instead of just, you know, the usual old mush. I think the Smiths audience, certainly in England, is quite, once again, unique because it really seems to consist of people who are so tired of being lied to by the music industry, tired of having everything just slapped in their face and saying, this is what you want, and that's not really how they're living, and it's not really speaking to them in any useful way. So I think the Smiths audience is also made up of people who adore popular music but actually hate the chart, hate to listen to the radio, hate to watch the silly candy floss programs. They want to be treated like, you know, sensible human beings, not as... I mean, why should everything be aimed at the 6-year-old mentality? It's not a matter of being overtly serious. Yes, I know indeed. But it's not a matter of being critically serious and being doom-laden and being depressive. That's not the case that I'm trying to argue. We should just be treated as rational human beings, that's all.